Hey y'all, welcome back to our channel. I'm Colleen and this is Our Blessed Life, and today I'm doing a mom tag.
Changes every heart, and any heart can change you.
So I've got some questions that were given to me by Christy from One Blessed Mess. I will link her channel down below. She's a really sweet homeschooling mama. She's on her first year of homeschooling. So check out her channel and give her some love and some support. And I am going to tag Ashley at Home Sweet Homeschool. She's a fellow homeschooling mama that I've done a couple of collaborations with, and she is so sweet. I think you'll love her channel. I'll also put her information down in the description box below. So I've got the questions here on my phone. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first question is, how did you meet your spouse? So Gary and I met on Match.com. I don't even know if Match.com still exists, but I had heard about it from a friend at work. I was really skeptical about it, and I signed up for a 7-day free trial, and during that free trial I met Gary, and we had talked by phone. Well, we had emailed a little bit through the Match.com website, and then we started talking by phone, and we had a lot of good conversations. We were talking about things like how important our grandparents were in our lives and things like that, and so we really got to know each other pretty well by phone. And then we had our first date at a Charlotte Hornets basketball game, and so we did that, and pretty much ever since then we have been together. So the rest is history, and we've been married now for, in December of this year, will be 19 years. So almost 19 years we have been married. Okay, the next question is, how many children do you have? So I have 2 kids. We have Sophie, who is 7, and then Katie, who is 15. Katie is our biological child, and Sophie was adopted from China through international adoption. Okay, so so the next one is, were all the things you heard about childbirth or adoption right or way off? So my pregnancy was very difficult. So no, I would say that my pregnancy was a lot different than what I had been told, and I will address that more in another question that talks about pregnancy. As far as adoption, we had been through tons and tons of training classes to talk about bonding and adoption and all the different trauma and all that kind of stuff that can be present with an adopted child. And all of that was helpful, but at the end of the day, every child is so different and every situation is so different. I really felt like a lot of things had not really been addressed. So like on the trauma side, I was really surprised at how long it would take Sophie to bond. I was surprised at how long she would just struggle. She was 3.5 when she came home, and for about a year she had just meltdowns where she would cry for hours at a time. Maybe 3 hours of the day she would just have screaming fits. And there was really no way to console her. She wouldn't let you hold her. She wouldn't really allow any kind of comforting or anything like that. And really, I kind of felt like there was nowhere to turn. There was no way to get any help, because really with our medical professionals, it wasn't really something they were equipped to deal with. We did have an adoption agency, but whenever we would call them, they would kind of give us the kind of pat answers, just the typical stuff, which of course we'd been through the training. We'd already tried all of that. That wasn't working. So I found that adoption was way harder than probably what we were prepared for, and also way more isolating than what we were prepared for, just in the sense that people didn't understand what we were going through. We didn't understand what we were going through, and we really didn't know how to help Sophie. And really in the end, it was just time that helped her, adjust or whatever. So she's doing great now, but we do still have times when she is struggling greatly as far as just being able to regulate herself, and just, meltdowns and things like that. The next one is biggest advice for someone having a baby or adopting. I think I would just say, as far as just parenting in general, that you know your kids better than anyone. So kind of whenever someone gives you advice, kind of take it with a grain of salt, just in the sense that, okay, that's great, and that may or may not apply to my family and my life. That may or may not apply to my child. So if I would have followed all the advice that I was given with Sophie, that definitely would not have worked. I really just think all children are they're such individuals, and they have their own minds, and they're just all so different, that I think you really just have to use your gut instinct sometimes as a mom, just to really know what they need at the time. So my biggest advice would just be to trust your gut instinct as a mom, and to pray as far as dealing with issues with parenting with your children. Was your pregnancy hard or easy? My pregnancy was extremely hard. First of all, right before becoming pregnant with Katie, I had a miscarriage. So I had a miscarriage of twins in July of 2003, and then in September was pregnant with Katie through IVF. So when we went in to actually have the embryos transferred through an IVF procedure, at the last minute, they changed us from transferring two embryos to transferring 5 embryos, which was all the embryos that we had. So she discussed with us about selective reduction and the fact that she needed to transfer 5 embryos, but I would need to be willing to undergo selective reduction, which is abortion, if necessary. And so we told her no, we would not be interested in doing that we would refuse that. And in the end, for some reason, she transferred 5 embryos anyway. So we had 5 embryos transferred, 4 embryos miscarried, and Katie remained. So it was kind of a traumatic beginning of the pregnancy. The whole first trimester, I had issues with bleeding and just nausea and just feeling terrible, feeling tired. Well, it was a really difficult pregnancy, but I was really happy because I was pregnant, and since we'd gone through IVF and everything, it was just such a blessing that, you know, really didn't mind all of the other stuff, the sickness and everything. So when I got to my second trimester, things were good until about 27 weeks. And then I had severe bleeding. We found out I had placenta previa. I thought I was having a miscarriage, or I guess at that point it would have been considered a stillbirth. So I was admitted to the hospital, and I spent that week in and out of the hospital, and they kind of had discharged me saying, you're going to need to be on bed rest for the rest of your pregnancy. So that's what we thought was going to happen. Then I had a really severe bleeding episode, and I was put back in the hospital. And I was actually transferred to a hospital that had a higher level NICU via ambulance, just kind of in the middle of the night one night, and I was admitted to the hospital for the remainder of my pregnancy. So from week 27, I was in and out of the hospital, and from 28 weeks to 34 weeks, when Katie was born early, I was in 2 different hospitals. So at first I was at the high-level NICU hospital, and I lost all my doctors because they weren't doctors there, and all of that kind of stuff. It was a really difficult hospital to be in. It was the kind of hospital, they wake you up in the middle of the night to draw blood and things like that. It was a really difficult experience being at that hospital. So when I got to 32 weeks, I asked to be transferred back to our local hospital, and that way I could have, you know, all of my regular doctors and everything. And so everybody agreed to do that. And the only condition was that the hospital that I was at refused to release me unless I was transported by ambulance. So we did that. I was readmitted to my regular hospital, and because the first hospital wanted to go ahead and do an emergency, or go ahead and do a C-section and go ahead and have Katie earlier. Gary and I wanted to wait as long as we possibly could to do that. So every week we would kind of meet with a team of doctors and decide, you know, how am I doing? How's the baby doing? you know, how much longer is it safe to go? And so finally at week 34, they basically said, if you have another bleeding episode, we're going to have to deliver. It will be via emergency C-section. And so 34 weeks and 1 day, Katie was born premature. She was 3 pounds 15 ounces, and she was a fighter. I mean, I really feel like Katie's always been a fighter, but I feel like if she had not been a fighter, she would not have lived, because she went through so much just in that pregnancy. And born 3 pounds 15 ounces. She was in the hospital for another 10 days in the NICU, just to gain some weight, and just to be able to eat and all of those things. And she had to pass a car seat test. And so she was discharged after 10 days. I stayed in the hospital, I think, another 4 or 5 days. I had to have a blood transfusion, and I was really sick after I had her, just because of everything that had happened to me in my traumatic pregnancy. So, but after 10 days, she was discharged. I was still unable to drive, and so my mother-in-law was staying with us and was basically driving me back and forth to the hospital every day. And Gary had to go back to work fairly quickly, because he was basically spending all of that time while I was admitted to the hospital. He was living in the hospital with me. Like, he had his little cot in there. He would get up, he would take a shower, he would go to work, and then he would come back home to our hospital room, because we were there from week 28 to week 34, and then really almost another week, because it was another 4 days or 5 days before I was released. So we were in the hospital for 7 weeks, and in and out of the hospital for 1 additional week prior to that. So then when Katie was between 18 months and 2 years old, we had thought about doing IVF again. We decided not to do that because we didn't have any embryos that had to be frozen. All of our embryos had been used, and we just decided that we didn't want to have that situation of embryos out there that weren't used. And so we decided not to go forward with IVF, and that our family was complete. But little did we know, when Katie was 9 years old, that God would tell us otherwise, that our family was not complete, and we would be pursuing an international adoption for Sophie in China. So what's the hardest thing about parenting? I think if I had to pick one thing that's hard, is probably just the overall weight of the responsibility that you have for your children, in teaching them right from wrong, teaching them, you know, a love for Jesus, and you know, and homeschooling and that kind of thing. That's probably the overall hardest thing for me about parenting, is just the weight of that responsibility placed on us. You know, what is the most rewarding thing about parenting? It's just neat to see them kind of turn into their own people, have their own ideas. You know, they're both so different, yet they're both so similar, and you know, one's biological, one's not, so that's kind of interesting. It was really rewarding when Katie accepted Christ and was baptized, just to see her go through that process. And so those are the things that for me are rewarding as a parent. Do you have any hobbies or guilty pleasures? So I really don't know that I have a whole lot of time in my life for hobbies. I used to would say that my hobby was photography. I guess right now my hobby is probably YouTube. I do love creating videos, that creative process that happens there. I do love to read, but I don't have a lot of time for reading, so that doesn't happen very often. When I do read, I like to read about history. I've kind of used to be more of a fiction person. Now I think I'm more of a nonfiction person as I get older. And I love watching movies, and every once in a while I will just declare that it's movie day, and I will literally sit on my couch all day and watch like as many movies as I can, at least 3 or 4. And you know, people will just kind of rotate in and out of the room with me, as you know, whether they're interested in the movie or not, you know, if they want to see one and not the other or whatever. So people kind of come and go, but I just sit on the couch and have movie day. And so that happens probably 2 or 3 times a year, and it's my favorite day. So the next one is, if you had to sum up your goal as a mom in 2 words, what would they be? So I think for me, it would be teaching and love. So just in the sense of teaching my kids to love each other, to love other people, to show love, to love Jesus. So I think those are my primary goals as a mom. And then the last one is share one of your favorite family memories. So for me, I love to travel with my family. So some of my favorite memories would just be some of the trips that we've been on. We just enjoy exploring together. We enjoy going hiking. We went to Boston a couple of years ago, and that was really fun. Even for Sophie, she didn't understand a lot of what she was seeing with the history and that sort of thing. But that was a lot of fun for us. We went to Pennsylvania one time to go see my brother, and along the way, we stopped at Williamsburg, and we went through the Amish country in Pennsylvania. We went to the Hershey chocolate factory, but we really didn't know where we were going. We really didn't have a lot of plans, and so we just kind of came up with ideas along the way, and that was a whole lot of fun. So I just love it when we're all together traveling and learning new things, and just being together like that. And probably out of all of those things, my favorite thing that we do together is hiking. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this mom tag. If you're a mom YouTuber and you'd like to participate, I'll have the questions below. Thanks for watching our video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.